Every Christmas I try to build something fun and memorable. This year was no different, except for one thing. I completely forgot it was already 20th of December when I realized it. Panic kicked in, there are only few days left, and I told myself, this project will be super simple. Of course, I was very wrong. I just wanted to have some fun time with my little cousin during Christmas. Somewhere between that thought and a late night brainstorming session, this idea of a moving Santa came up, a scary one. I immediately bought a Santa costume and jumped straight into the electronics. I started by planning the structure first. This Santa needed to move, which meant motors, and powerful ones. After searching, I found some geared motors rated at 200 RPM. I had to choose low speed motors because the last thing I wanted was my Santa face planting on the floor. For the base, I bought 12mm plywood sheet, installed the motors and used thick wires because these motors were no joke. I soldered the wires directly to the motor terminals and drilled holes in the plywood base to route them neatly. To make steering smooth, I added a caster wheel as a third wheel support, but the problem was that it was too small, so I cut two wooden battens and used them as backing underneath until the caster wheel height was perfect. With that sorted, I installed the motor driver, connected it to an Arduino and an RC receiver, and it behaved like a complete lunatic. The left wheel kept rotating in one direction. I checked the code, found no errors. Checked the remote, no issues. After nearly an hour of frustration, I found the culprit, the jumper wire. I replaced it and everything worked perfectly. Lesson learned. Again. I don't know how much time these lessons will waste. Next came the Santa himself. I used electrical conduit pipes to build the body frame and 3D printed mounts to hold them. After installing the mounts, I cut two pieces of conduit pipes and forged them into the foot mounts. They were insanely tight, but somehow I managed to mount the legs. I used T-joints for the waist, cut some PVC conduits, pressed them in, let Santa's pants on and reinstalled the waist. At this point, it looked, yes, okay-ish. I added more conduits for the torso and shoulders. When I tested Santa's jacket, it fit perfectly, which felt like a small victory. I mounted another conduit for the head and placed the head on the top and immediately realized Santa looked like he'd been starving all the year and desperately needed vitamin shots. Poor guy lost all his money sending gifts. For extra spice, I wanted Santa to swing an axe on his right hand when it comes near anyone. I 3D printed a servo mount and installed it on the right shoulder, securing it with screws. I mounted a powerful 25 kg servo using M3 nuts and bolts. Then I laser cut an X out of 2mm MDF board. To connect everything, I designed and printed a servo horn adapter that could hold a conduit pipe. I also made a long cable for the servo and connected it to the RC receiver and tested the swing. It worked. To make Santa look scarier, I glued two orange LEDs into his eyes and connected them to a battery. When I tested them, Santa looked alive and evil. But there was another issue. The entire Santa was wiggly. And after this much of work, it feels a little bit disappointing. So I went back, 3D printed stronger mounts, installed them and mounted the Santa again. This time, the structure was solid with barely any wiggle. Now it was time to give Santa his long overdue vitamin and protein shots. I used cable ties to roll foam tightly and inserted it into Santa's arms, folded more foam and stuffed it into the torso. Santa finally started to look healthy, or at least a little bit less skinny. But sadly, he now looked like a zombie because his arms were completely straight, and no people's arms are completely straight except for zombies. I removed them, heated the conduits, bent them into a more natural pose and reinstalled them. This gave the Santa a more humanly look. I also screwed the movable arm so that it wouldn't fall off during motion. Then I added some more foam, cut off the excess foam, taped loose parts and pulled down the slabs. Now I installed the X which I had laser cut and painted earlier and tested the motion again. It worked. And it was awesome. This arm was moving, but clearly it lacked power and struggled. The servo I have used in this arm was a powerful one and it required its separate power source. So I made a separate power source just for the arm servo. Then I built an MDF enclosure for the electronics and cleaned up the wiring mess. And finally my Santa robot was ready for testing. I tested Santa at my workplace. I noticed during the arm movement this sleeve slipped and this exposed the conduit pipes. So I glued the sleeve in place using hot glue. That's just how these projects go. Fix one, discover another. Fix that, and another. So with that, my terrifying motorized X-swinging Santa was finally complete, and it was time to test it on the Christmas day, and I'm going to test it on the streets during the Christmas night, and let's look some public reaction. You need to subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss that video and see some amazing public reaction to this insanity.